Well, hi everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Ag Talk with Doc. Today we're proud to have a fellow Kansan, the pride of Mankato, Kansas, here today with us, President Trump's USTR for Agriculture. Gregg Doud, welcome.
Senator, good to see you.
Of course. Tell us what you're up to nowadays.
Well, I am working from home on the horse farm south of Annapolis, Maryland, for a group of military guys. These are West Point guys. We do intelligence gathering for agricultural companies all across the United States. And two of these guys were the two most recent colonels in charge of wargaming at the Army War College. So we have taken the military wargaming business model to agriculture.
It's interesting. You know, if I was ever going to ask about commodity advice, you would be the person that I would go to. And, you know, the subject on everybody's mind back home is fertilizers and pesticides. And now we have Ukraine kind of blowing up on us as well. I didn't realize this, but Ukraine accounts for like 10-15% of the world's exports of wheat and corn. So what would be your advice to farmers back home as we think about some of the problems going on with fertilizers and the Ukraine situation?
You know, I've been on the road every week except for one so far this year, giving speeches and answering questions about the outlook for agricultural commodities. And that is by far the hottest topic and by far the most complicated topic, because whether it's urea or anhydrous or in Jewell County we call it liquid fertilizer, what you learn is the balance sheets, the supply and demand, the fundamentals for each one of these is very different. And it comes from different parts of the world. Supply chains are different. It's very, very complicated. But you have a situation where about a third of the phosphate in the world comes from China. And you know, they had the blackouts over there last summer because they ran out of coal. And so that really is what the constriction started with what goes on in China. And about that time that happened, then Putin announced late last summer that he was going to ban the export of fertilizer through about July of this year. So that's when this thing really kind of set off, and it's going to be, you know, prices are reacting accordingly. It's going on all over the world, just not in the U.S. So the Brazilians are having trouble. The Chinese are having trouble. Even in Europe in particular is having a lot of trouble on the fertilizer side. So this is an important issue.
Do you see it going away soon, or what do you? What's your crystal ball?
Not soon. The crystal ball is that this one's going to be with us for a while. The crystal ball on wheat, you ask about wheat. You know, if you add Kazakhstan, Russia, and the Ukraine together, that's about a third of all the wheat traded in the world. And so this is a very big deal right now that we're monitoring very, very closely at Aimpoint Research. You know, we stopped exporting corn and wheat out of the Ukraine here a few days ago. Now everything is stopped out of Russia because of the SWIFT decision. Okay. And you know, the honest answer is nobody woke up this morning and said, I think I'm going to buy some Russian wheat.
Right.
And so nobody wants to do it. You can't bank it, and nobody in their right mind owns an ocean-going vessel is going to send their vessel into the Black Sea right now. So that part of the world is shut down, and this is a very, very big deal for the commodity business. We've seen the most unbelievable volatility in the wheat market, down 75 cents, up 67 cents. And I think this, unfortunately, is also going to be something that we see here for a while until we understand what Vladimir Putin's going to do.
You know, Gregg, I don't even know, when would they be planting their crops in Ukraine, whether it's wheat or corn? Help me out.
So, you know, Ukraine exports 33 million tons of corn.
Okay.
That's about half of U.S. corn exports. They are an enormous player in the world trade of corn. They're supposed to start planting here in, and I would say 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
And the question is, are the tractors going to have any diesel fuel? Are there, you know, what's going to happen with the seeds? What's going to happen with the fertilizer? So, you know, you don't have a redo. If this thing lasts 2 or 3 or 4 months, you can't just decide to plant a corn crop then.
Right. So they should be planting corn in 3 or 4 weeks. They don't have the diesel fuel to do that. And I suppose they've got wheat in the ground like we do, and they would be harvesting it this summer?
So they have some winter wheat, a lot of spring wheat.
Okay.
And so think of that as about the same as Minnesota or the Dakotas.
Okay.
Okay, and so typically their wheat comes off, I would say usually about July. So by the 1st of August, they're ready to go on the world wheat market. and then it's later on in the fall on the corn side of the equation. But you know, it's everybody's thinking about getting ready for planting. I just saw on social media today in the Ukraine a guy out spreading manure for fertilizer. And so it's that, you know, we all in the United States, it's that time of year, and it's that time of year in the Ukraine as well.
Yeah, American agriculture is amazing that we just take it for granted. You know, I think some of the greatest victories from the Trump administration you were part of, the agriculture negotiations, USMCA, Japan, China, South Korea. What did you learn? What was it like working with President Trump? Did he just turn you loose, or was he micromanaging you and tweeting at you, or what was that like?
So many stories I could tell in the interaction between my boss, Ambassador Robert Lighthizer, the U.S. Trade Representative, sure, and the President. One story I will tell is we were in the middle of a negotiation with the Chinese, and the boss's phone rang, and the boss was kind of embarrassed, and he looked down at it, and then he showed it to the Vice Premier of China. It was the president calling.
I've had that happen to me once or twice as well. When the White House switchboard lights up on your phone,
right,
you better take it.
It cuts through everything, and the answer is he was very engaged in the topic of trade. Very, very engaged. And that's what made all of this come together. You know, when I was there in less than 3 years, we renegotiated Mexico, Canada, Japan, and China. That's nearly 1/2 of all U.S. ag exports. Yeah. Were, in Kansas Farm Boy terminology, overhauled while we were there.
Yep.
So really historic.
Great success.
Particularly with China.
Yeah.
Because in the China deal, we renegotiated, or we fixed 57 structural changes. And I'm always asked, you know, Greg, did it really matter? Did you make any progress? And the answer to that is, Senator, before we started the negotiations, we had 1,500 facilities in the U.S. eligible to export products to China. Meat processing facilities, flour milling facilities, infant formula facilities, 1,500 of those. Today we have over 4,000 facilities eligible to export products to China. That's how we went in 1 year from $26 to $33 billion in U.S. exports. This was really the first full year in history we've ever had beef trade to China, and I messed that up, Senator. I got to tell you, I told the boss, I said, this is $1 billion in U.S. beef exports to China. If we ever, someday it'll get up and running, and I completely missed it. We didn't sell them $1 billion last year, Senator. We sold them, if you include Hong Kong, which you have to do, $2.1 billion.
$2 billion of beef, most of it from Kansas, I hope.
I hope, yeah.
Yeah, we can only hope so. You know, Greg, another common question I'm getting from folks is, on the one hand, China didn't live up to their phase one numbers, and you can tell us what it was for agriculture. And this administration's they don't have a USTR for agriculture in place yet. Is there going to be a phase two? Just talk China a little bit more for us.
So the answer is the deal was $80 billion over 2 years. So it was a little less than 40 in 1 year, a little more than 40 in the next year. So we took it from 26 to 33, which isn't 40, but that's a huge jump.
Right.
And if we, you know, stay with it, and part of the deal was, of course, that it had to be economic. The prices had to be supported. They weren't going to spend more on U.S. soybeans than on Brazilian soybeans.
Sure.
Nobody would expect them to do that.
Right.
Did I see them do anything that was uneconomic when I was in the job or in the last year since? No. I think China's played this very, very, on the agricultural side, they've been very serious about this. They've made every effort. And I think this is going to continue to grow. And the reason for that, Senator, is China's total ag imports from the world are about 160 plus billion. That's about the same, you know, our U.S. total ag exports last year went from 150 to 177. So they import from the world in ag our total exports. So to take that from 25 or 30 to 40, we should be able to do this with the changes that we've made.
So you're pretty optimistic over the next year. We may see more than the 33.
Well, yes, I think so. Assuming that we, you know, grow a good corn crop and keep the beef thing going, and we're going to be down on pork because they're going to regrow their hog herd over there. But we have a lot of opportunity there, no question.
Let's turn back to USMCA for a little bit. I had the pleasure and the honor of going there and helping negotiate a little bit there. What are some of the big victories out of USMCA for agriculture as we've had has it been a year, 2 years now since we signed it? 2 years. And maybe some of the concerns you have about it that aren't going as well as you had hoped for agriculture.
Well, fortunately with NAFTA, everything was already at zero. We had a few wrinkles, one of them being dairy with Canada.
Yep.
And to the credit of Ambassador Lighthizer and USTR and the Trump administration, we took off after Canada right away. We knew that they wouldn't play well with others in what we had agreed to. And this administration has followed through. We've still got to see that. So we have problems with Canada and dairy, but we've always had that. But otherwise, everything's doing really well. The one issue that I am very concerned about overall, frankly, is Mexico, Senator. You know, Mexico hasn't approved a biotech trait since Lopez Obrador has been in office. They're really frustrating on this point, but they were a huge importer. You know, they were second best market for U.S. agricultural exports last year. But, you know, we've got to keep the pressure on Mexico to make sure that they...
And which products will that impact coming from Kansas? Help me out.
Well, right now, I don't know that it's impacting anything, but it's in terms of new technology. For instance, new corn traits or new soybean traits that are in terms of biotech traits. We can't approve those and get those out on the farm to use them until Mexico's made that approval. And right now, they're just setting on all of those things.
Okay. You made some starts with some other markets, and I'm thinking India comes to mind, and I can't remember. Yeah, it was the European Union. You know, as you exited the stage a year ago, what was kind of the status of some of those negotiations, challenges? The UK was another one I remember talking to you about, and again, I go back to the fact that we don't have somebody in your position yet. They haven't given us a name to even consider yet in the Senate. How are those ag negotiations going to go forward without your position being filled by this administration?
Well, you know, the first thing is the administration hasn't sent up Trade Promotion Authority. It's expired.
That's right.
What
does that mean to people? Help us explain that.
What that means is that is where Congress lets the executive branch negotiate the deal, and then Congress approves it up or down. If you don't have that, then Congress can fiddle with the deal. No offense, Senator.
I get it.
But nobody is going to negotiate with us in good faith if that's the way the situation is.
If you have 535 folks trying to negotiate
right.
it rather than the White House.
Right. And what I did in my old role, that's right.
And that was for a bilateral trade agreement.
That's right.
As long as it's a bilateral trade agreement, the TPA, is that what it was called?
Yes.
Would allow the White House to negotiate some of these deals. And there were some guardrails.
Right.
And that was the beauty of doing these bilateral agreements.
So we'd love to do a deal with UK. We had the deal with Kenya up and running. I'd like to see us do a deal with a country like Ecuador and kind of shore that place, you know, in South America up. You're right. We did spend a lot of time in 2020 talking to India. And Ambassador Lighthizer worked really, really hard on that, and it was a frustration really with just the bureaucracy in India. Couldn't cut through it, and that's one thing we did with China is we cut through that bureaucracy and were able to get something really substantial done there. We couldn't even get anything minor done with India, and I think that's going to be a frustration for us in agriculture for a long time. You know, India in a couple of years is going to have more people than China.
Exactly. I can't tell you how important a relationship I think that we have with India going forward. As we try to manage a relationship with China, India needs to be our partner. And just speak a little bit about their culture. And I've been told maybe they don't have the same respect for intellectual property and some of those issues. What was holding up the trade agreement getting done?
Well, India has some of the highest tariffs in agriculture in the world, many of them over 100%. And you have over 500 million subsistence Indian farmers.
Okay.
And they just don't, the Indian government wants to protect them. You know, they subsidize their water, their electricity, their fuel, their fertilizer in a big way to keep agriculture in India the way it is. And until you get them to liberalize trade a little bit, you know, one of the things that we did on wheat is I went to Geneva and met with them at the WTO and said, you said that this is what you're spending on subsidies on wheat. Well, we found that you're spending 6 or 7 times that. And so we were, showing the world that, U.S. Agriculture isn't the problem. There's a lot of other people in the world doing a lot more damage than we are. And India, to me, is at the top of that list today.
Okay. Greg, maybe let's just briefly talk about the EU a little bit and maybe talk about, there seem to be so wrapped around the axle about climate issues. I'm saying that they're going to starve to death before anyone dies from a climate situation. What's going on in the EU with agriculture? And it seems like we can't get any traction there with the trade agreement either.
Well, they have this interesting new initiative called the EU Farm to Fork Initiative, where they want to cut fertilizer use by 25%, pesticide use by 50%. They want to set aside 10% of their land. Senator, if they do all this, it's not going to be the farm to fork, it's going to be the farm to empty fork.
Yeah.
And in fact, if they do that in 10 years' time, and this is some of the work we do at Aimpoint Research, they're going to be a major importer of grain, competing with other, Southeast Asian countries, et cetera, for that grain. And it's just completely bonkers. I don't know the word to use. It doesn't make any sense why they're headed down this road. Their livestock industry is shrinking. They want to shrink their production agriculture. They want to ship it outside of the European Union. I don't understand the mentality in Europe, but it's really a problem because it involves no use of technology in agriculture. And this is one of the conversations that I had with my Chinese counterpart as I said, look, the way forward in agriculture globally is the use of technology. That's where the United States is going, and we're not going to apologize for it.
Great. Greg, last question. If you were talking to a group of young farmers back in Kansas, what's the future of agriculture look like, and where's the bright opportunities you see going forward? What should we be telling our children and grandchildren about agriculture?
Well, there's this notion that the number of farmers is shrinking and the picture is bleak. Yeah, there's going to be more consolidation in agriculture, but the use of technology in agriculture and the amount of money and venture capital going into agriculture for this technology is unbelievable. And the big answer is this. If you look 10 to 20 years down the road, globally, the supply of protein in the world comes nowhere near meeting the demand for protein in the world. And Senator, the opportunity for us in Kansas and in the United States for protein, for animal agriculture, for the meat side of the equation is unbelievable. We have the ability to do this better than anywhere else in the world. We have the technology to do it, and the opportunity to me and what I see going forward is just absolutely incredible.
That's great. Well, Greg, we enjoyed having you today. We're so proud of you, one Kansan to another, what you've done to help move Kansas agriculture forward by your efforts across the nation. Thanks for visiting with us today, and thanks everybody for joining us today on Ag Talk with Doc.